He said it was just about tradition. Then why did it feel like a leash? Dinner smelled like roasted rosemary chicken, but the air was thick with tension and rules. I sat across from Daniel at the long oak table, the soft clink of silverware almost too polite, too rehearsed. Laura passed me the mashed potatoes without looking up. Ashley glanced at my blouse, a sleek, sleeveless black top I wore under a light cardigan, and smirked. "Well," she said casually, "I guess some people think modesty is optional these days." I didn't bite, not yet. The moment had started out promising. That afternoon, one of my design projects, a sleek, minimalist restaurant downtown, was featured in Lakeshore Interiors. My name in print, my photos front and center. My phone had buzzed with congratulatory texts, a few even from former clients asking about availability. But when I brought it up at dinner, Daniel barely reacted. "They're just local pieces, Bella," he said, slicing into his chicken. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." I blinked. "It's the third time this year. That's something, isn't it?" He shrugged. "Just saying, you're barely home anymore. I don't even know who half your clients are." And there it was. Laura chimed in, right on cue. "In this family, we believe a woman's first job is her home. These late nights, it sets a bad tone." She sipped her wine like it was holy truth. Ashley snorted into her napkin. I looked to Thomas, hoping for a lifeline, but he kept his eyes on his plate. He always did. I swallowed hard, trying not to let the sharp burn behind my eyes show. "I'm not neglecting anyone. I'm working. For us." Daniel's jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. Later that evening, I stood alone in the guest room I called mine. The magazine was still in my bag, untouched. My fingers hovered over my phone before I finally typed, "I'm suffocating." Sent it to Cynthia, the only person who didn't treat me like a defiant pet. The reply was instant. "Then breathe somewhere else." I smiled bitterly. "Who's Cynthia?" Daniel's voice came from the doorway. I jumped. "She's just a friend, co-worker. I told you about her." His eyes narrowed. "You're texting her about me?" "Daniel, no. I saw the screen." He stepped closer. "Too many people are watching you, looking at you." I stared at him. "You're being paranoid." He exhaled sharply. "Then make it easier for me to trust you. Start dressing appropriately. Cover your hair when we go out, or better yet, just cover it all the time." "What?" I said, stunned. "It's distracting." His tone was clipped. "You walk into a room and people look, and I don't like it." I crossed my arms. "So, your solution is to erase me? If you live in my family's house, you'll follow our rules." He slammed the door before I could reply. My body trembled, not from fear. At least, not only from fear, but from the familiar weight of being made small. I brushed my hair behind my ear, the soft waves catching in my fingers. It was the one thing I always felt I still had control over. The one thing that still felt like mine. That night, I lay in bed with a bad feeling in my stomach. The pillow felt too soft, the silence too tight, the air too still. And when I woke up, hair was scattered all over the pillow. The reflection stared back at me, short, jagged, and trembling. The first thing I felt was cold, on the back of my neck, where warmth should have been. I sat up too fast, the blanket falling away, and there it was. Hair, my hair. Chunks of it. Some curled like broken ribbon, others chopped brutally, lying in clumps across the pillow, sheets, and even the floor. I scrambled to the mirror. What stared back at me wasn't me. It was someone I didn't recognize. Hair hacked unevenly, neck exposed, strands hanging like shame from both sides of my face. I looked like I'd lost a battle. I had. My hands shook as I ran my fingers through the remnants. "No, no, no." A scream clawed out of my throat before I could stop it. It ripped through the walls, down the hallway, slicing through the eerie morning quiet like glass. Laura appeared in the doorway, unfazed, holding a steaming mug of coffee. She took one glance at me and sighed. "Oh dear, trying out a new style, are we?" she said dryly, sipping. "Look at what he did." My voice cracked, hysterical. She tilted her head, eyes calm as a pond. It'll grow back. Maybe next time, you'll listen. Her footsteps were soft as she walked away. The coffee smell lingered, like a mockery. I stumbled out of the room, barely managing to throw on a hoodie. In the kitchen, Daniel sat at the table in his pressed shirt, calmly buttering toast. Ashley scrolled through her phone beside him, feet propped up like this was any other morning. My breath hitched. You cut my hair. Daniel didn't even glance up. It had to be done. Had to. My voice cracked. While I was asleep? He shrugged. You weren't listening. You weren't respecting the rules of this house. This is about discipline. I wanted to scream again. Ashley finally looked up, a smirk playing on her lips. Maybe now you'll behave, not like Shirley. That name hit like a slap. I remembered the first time Laura mentioned her, Daniel's ex. Always wore scarves after the breakup, she'd said, voice sweet as poison. She had beautiful hair once. So that was it, a pattern, a punishment. Something inside me cracked open. I turned on my heel, grabbed my keys, and left. The wind bit at my neck as I stepped outside. The early fall chill felt like revenge. My car felt like a lifeline, and the only place I could think to go was Cynthia's. She opened the door the second I knocked. Her eyes widened. Oh my God! She pulled me inside without asking questions. I collapsed onto her couch. The tears came slow, then fast, the kind that started from the chest and left you gasping. She held me through all of it. He did it while I was drugged, sleeping. My voice was barely a whisper. Cynthia didn't cry. She never did, but her face went stone cold. She got up, opened a drawer, and came back with a small, sealed box. Inside was a burner phone. From now on, document everything, she said. You think you're crazy? You're not. They just want you to think you are. I don't even know where to start. Start with proof, cameras, audio, text backups. He wants control? Give him a stage. Let him perform. That night, I went back. No one asked where I'd been. Daniel was already in the study. Laura folded laundry in front of the TV. Ashley was on her laptop humming. I moved like smoke, silent, invisible. I retrieved the small packages I'd hidden in my purse, then waited for them all to fall asleep. In the quiet hours, I set up the first camera in the bedroom, behind the bookshelf. Second, in the kitchen, behind the spice rack. Last, in the living room, tucked into the drawer beneath the router. My hands trembled with every step, but my eyes, they didn't. They were sharp, focused. If I had to stay in that house another day, I'd do it, but only as a ghost watching everything burn. The house looked quiet in the daylight, until I replayed what it did when no one was watching. Sunlight poured through the lace curtains, casting soft shadows on the hardwood floor. It would have looked peaceful to anyone walking by. But as I sat cross-legged in the corner of the bedroom, headphones on, laptop open, and cameras synced, I knew the truth. This house only smiled when it thought no one was looking. The first video loaded slowly. Kitchen. Tuesday, 3:18 p.m. Laura. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd always been in charge. She opened drawers with no hesitation, pulling out files, receipts, even rifling through my makeup bag. Her lips moved silently in the footage, brows furrowed in judgment. She picked up a small bottle of medication, turned it around, and scoffed before tossing it back carelessly. I clicked forward. Living room. Wednesday. Ashley entered in a towel, hair dripping, then my journal in her hands. She didn't even glance around, just flipped it open and began to read, lounging back as if it were the latest thriller novel. She paused on one page, smirked, took out her phone and snapped a photo. I felt bile rise in my throat, but it was the bedroom footage that shattered me. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, talking in a low voice. Laura stood in the doorway, arms crossed. I turned the volume up. She's not going anywhere, Daniel said. You need to tighten the leash, Laura replied. He exhaled. Cutting her hair was just the beginning. My lungs forgot how to breathe. I paused the video, then replayed it, again and again. Cutting her hair was just the beginning. He said it so casually, like it was strategy, a plan. I stared at the screen, frozen. Then my inbox pinged. From Shirley Bennett. Subject, "You're not alone." My fingers trembled as I clicked. The email was short. "I saw your picture in that design article. I recognized him. I need you to know. It wasn't just you. They broke me. Don't let them do it to you too." There was an attachment, a zip file labeled TRUTH. I hesitated, then opened it, scanned documents, email screenshots, financial statements with familiar names, Timothy, Daniel, accounts routed through fake charity foundations. Shirley had been their bookkeeper once. I scrolled faster, red flags everywhere. One document stood out, an internal ledger detailing unreported funds meant for veterans' housing that never reached the program. Another showed Daniel's signature beside his father's, funneling large sums into something called Walker Heritage Holdings, LLC. I checked the timestamp, less than 2 months ago. I felt my pulse in my ears. This wasn't just personal anymore. I began organizing. First, a folder on my desktop titled Proof A. Then, exported the video clips, one by one. I created an audio log from the camera feed, isolated Daniel's line, cleaned the background noise, saved it as audiolog1.mp3. Then I backed everything up to a new cloud drive. Encrypted, anonymous, just in case. Each click felt like a layer of fog lifting. I didn't cry, not yet. There wasn't time. Instead, I opened a blank document. The header: Divorce filing, grounds, emotional and psychological abuse. I stared at it for a long time, then typed the current date, circled it with red ink. There. This was the day I drew the line. The house was silent around me. Laura had gone to the store. Ashley was out with friends. Daniel was likely working late, whatever that meant for a man who had time to monitor his wife but not speak to her. And me? I was already packed. Not everything. Just the essentials. ID, passport, Shirley's documents, burner phone, some cash, and a copy of the proof. I placed the cameras where they could still run. Let them capture what happens when you think the doll has stopped blinking. As I pulled my hoodie over the jagged mess that used to be my hair, I took one final glance at the hallway mirror. I looked exhausted, but I also looked awake. By the time they noticed the silence, I was already gone, leaving only the cameras behind to speak for me. They smiled, passed the potatoes, and had no idea what I knew. The table looked almost picturesque. Mahogany polished to a shine, candles flickering in silver holders, the scent of rosemary chicken rising with the steam. But beneath the surface, something simmered. Not the gravy. Me. I took my seat without a word, placing a folded napkin across my lap, eyes scanning the faces I had grown to recognize all too well. Daniel sat at the head, Laura to his right, Ashley picking at her salad like she was too good for lettuce, and Thomas already halfway through his wine. 3 years ago, this table was a symbol of family unity. Now, it felt like a stage, and tonight, I was ready to flip the script. Small talk buzzed around me like static. "The fundraiser went well," Laura said, adjusting her pearl necklace. "They raised enough to repaint the clubhouse." Ashley smirked. "I hope they repaint your manners too. Someone told me you snapped at the florist." Laura ignored her, turning to me with a poised smile. "Isabella, you look subdued." "That's good. Modesty suits you." I smiled back, lips tight. "Thanks. Been thinking a lot lately. About boundaries." Daniel raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Ashley rolled her eyes. "Here we go?" "Oh, don't worry," I said, my voice as sweet as the iced tea in my glass. "It's not drama, just a conversation." Laura chuckled. "Well, we don't do drama at this table. Isn't that right, Daniel?" Daniel nodded. "Exactly." "I remember you saying that once," I said, turning my fork in the mashed potatoes. "Back when I still thought this was a safe space." A pause. Then Laura lifted her glass. "To peace and quiet, then." "To peace," I echoed, and slipped my phone a bit deeper into my pocket where it had been recording since I walked in. Thomas reached for the gravy. Can someone pass? Speaking of quiet, I interrupted. I've been thinking about sound lately, about how much we hear when no one thinks we're listening. Daniel's grip on his fork tightened. Isabella, I found something interesting, I continued, pulling a small flash drive from my cardigan pocket and placing it gently on the center of the table. It glinted under the chandelier. Cameras, very discreet ones. Ashley coughed, choking slightly on her wine. Excuse me? I installed them 2 weeks ago, while you were all at church. My gaze shifted from Laura to Daniel, then to Ashley. I figured it was time to stop feeling crazy and start collecting facts. What the hell is this? Daniel muttered, voice low and threatening. Evidence, I said, of Laura going through my drawers, of Ashley reading my journal, of you, Daniel, whispering to your mother about how cutting my hair was just the beginning. Thomas froze, mid-bite. Laura turned pale. Ashley looked like she wanted to throw something. Daniel stood. You spied on us? He growled. No, I said calmly, meeting his eyes. I protected myself. Something you never did. The air turned thick, every fork and knife now awkward, unwanted weapons. This is betrayal, Laura hissed. You want betrayal? I laughed, voice shaking. Try waking up to find your hair butchered by the man who said he loved you. Try having your privacy invaded by people who treat you like property. Try watching your career unravel because your husband tells clients you're mentally unstable. I did that to protect you, Daniel snapped. From what? Success? I shot back. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I'm done, I said. Done pretending. Done shrinking. I stood, my chair scraping the floor like thunder, and walked away from the table, 1 step, then 2, before turning back. Shirley says hi, I added, locking eyes with Laura. The look on her face was worth everything. Later that evening, I stood outside under the porch light, phone to my ear. Cynthia's voice crackled through the line. How'd it go? I looked back through the window, where the family sat motionless, the uneaten food still steaming. By the time dessert was served, no one was hungry anymore, except me, for justice. If cutting my hair was a lesson, what's the term for getting audited by federal agents? The sunlight in my new apartment filtered through sheer curtains, painting soft patterns across the table where Cynthia and I sat. Piles of documents, some printed, others scribbled with highlighters, covered nearly every inch. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitterness ground me. The air carried a different weight now, not the suffocating pressure of the Walker house, but a deliberate kind, purposeful. We were almost done. Cross-reference this one with Shirley's photos, Cynthia said, flipping a page and pointing to a transaction marked under Foundation Expenses, a suspiciously large donation to a charity I now knew had never received a dime. I nodded. Already verified, 3 of the listed foundations don't exist. The rest haven't received payments in years. She looked at me, brow raised. And you're ready? Number. But I nodded anyway. With trembling fingers and a breath that felt 5 years overdue, I finalized the report and attached the documents. I'd typed the email draft the night before. It was ready, addressed to the federal tax fraud hotline and blind copied to the largest client the Walker firm still had on record. I hovered over the send button, Cynthia watching me from across the table. You don't have to be brave, she said softly. Just honest. So I clicked. Silence followed. Then I exhaled. The next morning, the storm began. I didn't have to be there to see it. Cynthia's friend from the inside, a receptionist with a talent for passive observation, texted us updates like live commentary. 6 agents in suits just walked in. Daniel's face is purple. LOL. Timothy tried to explain something and got shut down fast. I couldn't stop the smile that curled at the corners of my mouth. Not because it was funny, it wasn't, but because, for once, the chaos wasn't inside me. Around noon, I received a call from a blocked number. I didn't pick up. A moment later, a voicemail arrived. Daniel's voice, tight and furious, nearly shaking through the recording. "What did you do, Isabella? What the hell did you do?" I didn't bother listening to the rest. Instead, I opened the envelope on the kitchen counter. The divorce papers were printed on crisp legal paper, ready and signed. I slid them into a registered mail envelope and sealed it with the calmest hands I'd had in years. It wasn't rage driving me now. It was precision. As I walked to the mailbox, the phone buzzed again. Shirley. "Well played, sister." Watching from LA, I stared at the message for a long time. A laugh escaped, quiet, real. There was something comforting about the fact that someone else had walked through the same fire and still found breath left to laugh. That evening, I was chopping vegetables when I heard a pounding on the apartment door. Cynthia looked up from the kitchen table where she was reviewing a printout of financial transactions. Her hand moved instinctively toward the small camcorder resting beside her planner, already powered on, red light blinking. I nodded. I opened the door. Daniel stood there, flushed with rage, tie loosened, shirt wrinkled like he'd been clawing at his own neck. His eyes locked on mine with the kind of desperation that only shows up when control slips through a man's fingers. "You think this is justice?" he barked, stepping forward. "You're destroying everything." I didn't move, didn't flinch. I simply stepped to the side. Cynthia stood in the hallway behind me, holding the camcorder steady, her expression neutral but her stance firm, 1 foot forward, shoulder square. Daniel froze. He looked from me to her, then back again. His voice dropped to a tremble. "You've ruined us." I stared at him for a moment, at the man who once promised love and offered only chains. Then I said quietly, with no apology in my voice, "No, you did that all by yourself." Cliffhanger. Daniel's voice cracked as he whispered, "You've ruined us." I smiled. "Number you did that all by yourself." It wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering who I was before they tried to erase me. The waves outside the cafe whispered against the sand, soft and steady like breath finally released. Morning sunlight spilled across the table where Elise sat waiting for a signature. I picked up the pen slowly, letting the ink glide across the paper like silk. My new apartment, my new city, my new beginning. Miami smelled like sea salt and second chances. Cynthia stirred her coffee across from me, watching me with that quiet smile she always wore when she saw something she approved of. "You're glowing," she said, tapping the rim of her mug. "Peace looks good on you." It did. So did the scar on my soul that had finally begun to fade. We walked down Ocean Drive afterward, sun rising high, breeze warm and forgiving. Every strand of my regrowing hair caught the light. It wasn't long, not yet, but it was mine. Every inch of it mine. Later that week, I flew back to Illinois for one last time. This time not in fear, but for closure. The courtroom was cold but bright. The judge's words were clean and final. Divorce granted, financial settlement approved. Daniel's eyes never met mine. Neither did Laura's. She sat in the back, clutching a scarf over her face like shame could be hidden behind silk. Timothy wasn't present. He was already under federal custody, his bail denied after new evidence surfaced from a mysterious anonymous source. Ashley was nowhere to be seen either. Rumor had it she lost her job after the audit revealed misuse of charitable funds tied to the family foundation. Back in Miami, I didn't waste time mourning ruins. I began building. With Cynthia's help, I launched a new firm, specializing in redesigning safe spaces for women, shelters, transitional homes, offices for nonprofits. Each blueprint felt like healing, each color palette, an anthem. Every wall I chose to repaint was a wall I'd once felt trapped behind. The ribbon cutting for our first shelter project came with speeches and smiles, but the best moment came afterward, when I turned a corner and found her standing there. Shirley. She looked exactly like her emails, resilient, elegant, and a little amused. Her hair had grown back too, but she still wore a scarf, this one in deep emerald. "For Flair," she winked. We didn't need many words, just a hug that lasted a little longer than expected. Then she pulled a small box from her bag and placed it in my hands. "Open it," she said, eyes twinkling. Inside was a wide-toothed comb carved from reclaimed walnut wood. On its handle, etched in soft curves, were the words, "A crown for the girl they tried to cut down." I blinked hard, then laughed through the tears. Shirley smiled. "Figured you might need something fit for the queen you've become." That night, back in my apartment, I sat by the window. The city lights danced across the glass, and soft music played from my phone. I opened the comb box again, ran the teeth through my growing hair, feeling the strands glide with ease and grace. As I brushed my new hair that night, I whispered, "This time, no one touches it but me." The courtroom verdict had passed, the audits exposed every lie, and those who once controlled Isabella's life were left with nothing but scandal and shame. What began as silent compliance turned into a calculated resistance, fueled not by vengeance, but by the need to reclaim identity. Justice, though delayed, struck with precision, reminding us that no mask of tradition can shield abusers from truth forever. Sometimes the strongest revenge is simply surviving, and rebuilding so brightly the shadows no longer dare to follow.